The Duke Blue Devils have historically been pretty good at home when they've held the number one ranking going up against an unranked opponent. 90-0 to be exact. Monday night, the Blue Devils would look to improve on that unblemished mark as they host the unranked Syracuse Orange. Well, that streak would end tonight, and it took shooter Cam Reddish being out with an illness, point guard Trey Jones exiting early with a shoulder injury, and a 75-foot prayer at the end of the first half to do it. The Blue Devils would be a much different team once Jones left, struggling to find any rhythm, forcing up a school record 43 threes, hitting just 9. This one would eventually go to overtime, where the Orange would hold on for the 95-91 upset. Syracuse Tyus Battle led the Orange with a season-high 32. Zion Williamson finished with a Duke freshman record 35 in the losing effort. The loss for the Devils could be much bigger than the one in the loss column, as the report on Jones is an AC joint separation. He'll be out indefinitely. Not good news for Duke as they host number 4 Virginia Saturday. Well, it's week 2, and this week we really focused on the differences in AP style writing or the inverted pyramid structure versus the broadcast style, otherwise known as the sandwich model. And let's just start with the inverted structure, the AP style writing. The big difference between the two is that in the inverted structure, you're going to have a lot of important information at the top, at the very beginning of your article or your story. You're going to load the front end of the article with the most important and most relevant information so that if some tough editorial choices needed to be made and something needed to be cut out, then the story would stand on its own at the very beginning at the lead of the story. In the body of the inverted pyramid is going to be the supporting facts, some evidence, some details of the most important information in the lead. And then in the tail of the inverted pyramid, AP style is going to be far less relevant information, and sometimes it might even feel like it shouldn't even be there, but maybe it's just something that's going to happen in the future that is of some relevance to what you just discussed in the body and in the lead, but oftentimes it's not that relevant. In the broadcast style or the sandwich model, you have the lead-in, you've got the body or the meat of your broadcast, and then you've got the tag or the bit of supporting bread underneath to kind of lift it up, to help it kind of stand and stay together. And the reason that they call it the sandwich model is because you've got the bread on top, which is your lead. It's going to give you a little taste of what's to come. And then you got the real juicy, thick meat in the middle. That's the heart of the story. That's where you're going to get all the substance and the story in and of itself that has the ability to stand on its own. And then you're going to have the tag at the end, which is the additional bread to kind of lift it up, maybe push and propel the story forward. And it could be something in the future that had some relevance with the meat of the story. So if there was an event, something of significance that happened in the meat of the story, then your tag might be the consequences or the circumstances surrounding that moving forward, just for an example. So you'll notice in my inverted pyramid model, in the lead, I basically gave you the who, what, when, where. It's a story that really tells hopefully a complete picture there. And then I went to the body and I talked about the significance of it. So I gave you in the lead that history was made. I didn't tell you how history was made until I got to the body. So, a little bit of building up there as far as that goes. But aside from that, you knew that it was Syracuse and Duke. You knew that the game was in Durham. You knew the outcome of the game. And you knew a few details that maybe played a role in the outcome. So it told a story in the first paragraph. The body were the details. Okay, so we talked about the significance of the history. I spelled it out for you in the body that Duke had previously been 90-0 as the number 1 ranked team at home against unranked opponents. Okay, that's a big deal right there. But it's not necessarily imperative to the story. The real story here is that number 1 Duke was knocked off at home versus an unranked opponent. Okay, nobody really expected that. Also in the body is another little supporting bit of information that is important, and that is that starting point guard Tre Jones suffered an AC joint separation. That's big. The tail of the inverted is very small here, and that basically is just that, hey, the Blue Devils are 14-2, so I give you their updated record, and they will host number 4 Virginia on Saturday. So it tells you of what's to come. That's how I'm going to round out that story. The broadcast copy, on the other hand, is a little bit different. I give you the lead, which is that Duke is playing at home, number 1, and they're 90-0 at home when playing unranked opponents. That kind of begs the question, well, why is he telling me that? Maybe there's something here. So I'm trying to build up a little bit of anticipation, a little bit of curiosity for the meat of this copy, which is that streak ended. So Duke did, in fact, lose. And you're thinking to yourself as the audience, maybe, well, how did that happen? Duke's so talented. Something must have happened. Well, it did. Cam Reddish, their starter, was out with an illness. That was a big deal. But the story quickly shifted because their starting point guard, who's probably their most important player, Tre Jones, exited and left the game with a shoulder injury. He didn't return. Syracuse also hit a 75-foot prayer at the end of the first half. That proved to be significant because the game went into overtime. So I'm telling you a little bit about everything that happened in this game in several lines here. I don't want to overload you with stats, but I gave you a few. Tyus Battle led the Orange with 32. Zion Williamson had a Duke freshman record with 35. So there's a little bit of history there as well. And then the tag here is just that, hey, look, that loss for Duke wasn't the only, probably wasn't the biggest loss. The big loss here is the loss of Tre Jones, because Duke has probably their biggest game of the season on Saturday against Virginia, ranked 4 in the country. So it's going to be a tough matchup, and that's kind of the prelude to what's to come. So you've got the lead, you got the meat, and you've got the tag, all relatively important here, but the most important is right there in the middle in the broadcast copy, whereas in the print inverted, the most important information is at the top in the lead.